And welcome to another episode of the Rorschach Test Podcast. I am your host, Tyrell James, and today I am doing another one of my big picture episodes. I started doing this last month. I decided that once a month I am going to do an episode called The Big Picture, where I'm going to talk about something that's going on in the news. I am going to and let me take that back. I'm not going to necessarily talk about something that's going on in the news or the world of entertainment or just something big that's going on. I'm not going to necessarily talk about that, but I'm going to use something that is going on, something major that's going on to highlight a much bigger issue. Um, again, I did this last month, and I like the direction. I like the feedback. I appreciate the feedback that I got from that. So this time I want to do it again. There's been a lot of talk about the Will Smith, Chris Rock, Jada Pinkett situation. Um, now, last month when I did this, I spoke about Slaughterhouse and the things that they were dealing with, but I took it off of Slaughterhouse, and that's what I'm going to do with all of these big picture episodes. I'm not going to keep it on the people that I am using to highlight this bigger issue. It's not about them. It's about, like I said, it's a bigger issue, and it's something that could affect all of us. So I am going to start by talking about Chris Rock, Will Smith, Jada Pinkett, but this isn't necessarily about them. Okay. So I just want to get that clear. Um, Yeah, here on the Rorschach Test podcast, what I do is I put up a series of Rorschach tests. I ask I normally have guests. I ask my guests, what do you see? And based off of what they see, I link it to what it is that they do for a living and to their passions. For these big picture episodes that I do where it's only me, I will still put up Rorschach Test podcasts, but I will link it to what it is that I'm going to speak about. And then I will put up a picture that I will use to lead me into what I really want to speak about. So, this is what I want to use to get into. So, Chris Rock being smacked by Will Smith, and Will Smith feeling what he was feeling and reacting to what Chris Rock said. That's what I want to speak about. So, the first thing I want to talk about is creating moments. I want to talk about two things. First, I want to talk about creating moments, and then I'm going to talk about waging war. So first, we're going to talk about creating moments. Okay, here is the Rorschach test that I'm sorry, yeah, here's the Rorschach test that I want to speak on. In this particular picture, what I see, it appears as if there are two wolves that are howling. They're looking up at the moon and they're howling. And those two wolves, so wolves are my favorite animals. I love wolves. Anytime that I've gone into, I'm in boxing and I'm a personal trainer. I've been involved in sports, and a lot of times, oftentimes when I'm about to engage in either combat or I'm about to play a sport or whatever, I try to go into it with this wolf mentality. I love the aggression that comes with wolves. I love that alpha mentality that comes with wolves, and I try to adapt and adopt that wolf mentality. Now, in this picture, what I see is two wolves, but in the middle of those wolves, that is the most important thing in this picture, and as it pertains to exactly what it is that I want to talk about. Right here in the middle, there is, I can't tell what that is. I have no idea what to say that is in the middle of these two wolves. However, I know that there's something that's in between them. These two wolves, we're talking about something, we're talking about animals that are very, very aggressive. Um, but there's something that is in between those wolves. And that's what I want to talk about. Something that is in between the aggression something that could probably prevent. If you look at this picture, I'm gonna put the picture up again. If you look at this picture, these wolves could be about to engage in some sort of uh, physical confrontation, but there's something that's in between them, something that's stopping it, and that's exactly what I want to talk about. So again, this is where we're going with this: the smack between the smack of Will's the smack heard around the world. Will Smith smacking Chris Rock, right? So here's where I want to go with this: creating moments. Creating moments. Now let me go back. Let me go back for a little bit. Go back to when I was a kid. My first time in therapy, I was 12 years old. I started going through some things and dealing with things when I was 10 years old. And at that point, it had been 2 years, actually a little bit more than 2 years, probably maybe about 3, maybe even 4 years worth of things that I had been dealing with before my parents decided that I needed therapy at 12 years old. So um, when I got into therapy, I learned a couple of things. One of the things that just a heads up, if you see me looking over to the side like this, I'm looking at my other computer where my notes are. So I just want you to be clear about what's happening, what's going on here. So my therapist at the time, she decided she wanted to teach me some lessons. She wanted to give me some tools to help me manage certain things, and I had certain fears. The reason that I came to her in the first place was because of a much bigger fear. I oftentimes think about Jay-Z's line. I can't remember what song it is, but he said, I remember vividly what these streets did to me, and that line resonated with me for so many different reasons. But the number one reason was the reason that I ended up in therapy in the first place, because I had just been exposed to some things as it pertained to the streets, some certain things that I saw, that really, really, it hit real close to home, like at home. Well, not in my home, but outside of my home. It wasn't us, but I don't want to go into all of the details. But let's know that certain things happened. It wasn't me or my family, but it was people that I was really close to. So anyway, I ended up having to go to therapy because I was introduced to something that a kid just should not see. Adults shouldn't see. But I was introduced to something. You're introduced to death. You're introduced to somebody being killed, being murdered, and then you being connected in some sort of way, even at a very, very young age. So that was the reason I was there. But what happened was it caused these fears in me, and one of the things that my therapist wanted to deal with was my fears, not just the fear that I had from what happened, but all of my fears. And the fear that she one of the fears that she decided to deal with, she told me to just tell her all of my fears. I told her that one of my fears was elevators. So she said, I'm going to give you I'm going to give you I'm going to give you a tool to use when you get onto an elevator to help you deal with that fear. She told me to close my eyes at that moment and to create the most peaceful scene that I could possibly come up with. And that's what I did. I created this scene in my mind. It was like this scene. It was like this grassy area. It's just this huge big field of grass, and then one tree and a bright beautiful sun, and the sky is just blue. It's a couple of little clouds, but it's not a cloudy day. It's just regular beautiful white clouds. It was just a very, very peaceful and serene setting that I created in my mind. And she said, when you get onto an elevator, I want you to, one at a time, put the details of this scene in your mind. Close your eyes and just put together this scene one at a time. So, first the grass, then the trees, then the sky, then the sun. She said, then I want you to think about how that scene makes you feel. So, what I did was I did that. I got on the elevator. And by the time that I was finished putting together this scene, the doors of the elevator were opening. So what she taught me at that moment was that she was teaching me to deal with my fears. She was also teaching me to find peace in the midst of my fears. But one thing about therapy that I learned And it didn't dawn on me until years later. One of the things that I learned about therapy was that therapy will strengthen parts of your life that you don't even know need to be strengthened. And I didn't pick up on this until later on in life, but she had planted these seeds. And then just my experiences, the way I was living my life, those things were that was the water. Those were the things that were watering my seeds. So as I got older and I realized there was one more thing that she was teaching me. And what she was teaching me was to create moments. She taught me to create a moment in between the moment that I felt what I felt and the moment that I reacted to what I felt. So as I got older and that dawned on me, it saved me from a lot of things. It probably saved me from going to jail. It probably saved me from even getting killed because there was a moment that was placed in between what I felt and the moment that I reacted to what I felt. So, what I mean by that is this: if somebody does something to anger me, I try very, very hard to close my eyes if I can. If they're in front of me, I'm not closing my eyes because there's no telling what could happen. But if it's a situation where they're not in front of me, maybe I can close my eyes, create this moment of peace where I don't necessarily react immediately based off of my emotions. But I create this moment of peace. And when I create that moment of peace, it calms me down. So now I don't react with anger. There's been a moment that has been created in between what I felt and the reaction to what I felt. So now, since that moment has been created, my reaction is going to be different. So when I say that maybe it saved me from going to jail, there could have been times where I felt something and my emotions told me, kill him, shoot him, stab him, beat the hell out of him. Whatever my emotions were telling me, I had to create a moment. I had to create that moment to tell me, let's just find peace right now, regardless of what's going on. The same thing that happened when I was on that elevator. I had to find peace. I had to find some sort of peace and create that peace. I had to do something where I was completely in control, regardless of what was going on around me. I had to have that control. And I had to create that moment of peace to prevent me from going a little too far. Now, if Will Smith, now again, like I said in the beginning, I don't like when things are happening in the world and all these issues, but I don't like talking, I don't like speaking on what other people may have been thinking or what they may have been feeling. And I also don't even necessarily really care about giving my opinions on what should have happened or how things should have been handled. That's between Will, Chris, and Jada. That's them, that's their business, not mine. But I will say this: if Will Smith was able to create a moment in between the moment that he felt what he felt and the moment that he reacted to what he felt, then we're having a completely different conversation. We're not talking about Will smacking Chris Rock. We're not talking about, there are a lot of people that say how toxic Jada is and Will is reacting to Jada. We're not having that conversation. Having a completely different conversation. And Will was able to just create that moment of peace for himself. Then that situation is handled differently. So what I'm saying to you all is that sometimes when something happens, see our emotions, and this is, I'm gonna tell you something. I know that everybody isn't a fan of the Bible, but I definitely think that there are a lot of things in the Bible that pertains to us all, right? So one of the things, there is a verse, a foolish man thinketh with his heart. And I honestly think that whether you believe in the Bible or not, I think that we can all agree that having emotional reactions to things can sometimes and most times be foolish. So we need to create a moment. We need to create that moment. And in that moment of creating that peace, logic has a chance to set in, and has a chance to step in and take over and say, emotions, I need you to take a back seat to this, because we're going to make this worse. If I allow you emotions, if I allow you to handle this, you are going to make this worse. That goes for a situation like Will and Jada, where you feel as though, okay, or Will and Chris Rock, where you feel as though, okay, I need to go and I need to make this physical. That applies to romantic relationships. You know, I oftentimes hear people say, think with your heart, think with your heart. Don't think with your heart. Your heart is stupid. Your heart just wants to feel. That's it. Your heart just wants to feel what it wants to feel. And your heart has a convenient memory. Your heart will make you stay in a relationship that you shouldn't be in, because it's remembering the good things about that relationship and completely overlooking the things about that relationship that should be the reasons that you walk away. So stop listening to your heart. Your heart is stupid. There is no brain in your heart. Your brain is up here. You need to create a moment where logic is able to come in and tell you, or tell emotions and tell your heart, I need you to take a back seat to this. You can't handle this. You're not equipped to handle this. You're too sensitive and you're stupid. So if Will would have just maybe created a moment, just created a moment, we're probably having a different conversation. So what I'm saying to you all is, anytime that you're so angered or hurt, and you want to immediately respond with that anger or with that pain, understand that there are certain ramifications. If if you're in a relationship with somebody and they hurt you, and your immediate response is an emotional response, you may say something to them that you may not necessarily mean. Actually, I take that back. You may mean it at that moment. The problem is that moment is going to go away. Anger will subside, and once that anger subsides and you realize, I didn't mean what I said, I didn't mean that, and maybe you're able to let that go and move on because you know that that's not what you meant. But the other person, they may not be able to get past that, because what you do, you know, when you're in a relationship with somebody, or not even just being in a relationship with somebody, but just having a relationship with anybody, whether it's mother to child, father to child, cousin to cousin, brother to brother, whatever it is, it does not matter, friend to friend, it does not matter what it is. When you're close enough, you know those person's insecurities, you know the things that hurt them the most. So if they do something to hurt you, and your reaction, your initial thought, your emotional reaction is to attack the thing that you know that they try to protect the most, it could lead to resentment. Because what could possibly happen is, once that anger subsides, once that anger is gone, now all you're left with is the thing that you said, and all they're left with is the thing that you said. And they have to deal with that. They have to continue on. And then what happens at that point is there could be some resentment. There is, how could you ever hit me with that? You know how that affects me. How could you attack that part of me? And it's hard to get past that. So now there's this resentment. And I'm going to tell you, resentment is a recipe for disaster when it comes to relationships. It's hard to move past that. And it's hard for the other person to convince you at that point, that's not what I meant. I was angry. I didn't mean to say it. And then, of course, your reaction was, well, why did you say it then? Well, I was angry. Now you got two people that can't see eye to eye. So what I'm saying is to just try to create moments. You can probably avoid a lot of pain and resentment and jail time and death if you just create a moment in between the time that you feel what you feel and the time that you react to what you feel. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is waging war. Oh, you know what? I didn't put up my Rorschach test. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay, here's the other one right here. In this particular Rorschach test, I see it looks like two people that are inside of a tornado and they're going head to head. So that tornado is like a symbol of chaos to me, or those tornadoes, they're like a symbol of chaos to me. Both of these people look like they are wrapped into something, and it looks like their arms, their whole body is just consumed with something that is wrapping around them. And they are above two tornadoes, and maybe those two tornadoes are controlling them. Tornadoes, they cause chaos, they cause destruction. And these two people, their hands are tied, their arms are tied, their legs are tied. There's nothing that they can do. They are just trapped in what appears to be a cocoon of chaos. And they're going head to head, both of those heads together. All I see is chaos in this picture. It seems as if they're waging war against each other. So I want to talk about waging war now. And I still want to talk about Chris Rock and Will Smith. So I don't know if this is the case or not. I have no idea. But just for the sake of argument, just for the sake of the point that I want to make for this particular podcast, let's just say that Chris Rock was well aware of the fact that Jada Pinkett felt some way about having alopecia. Let's say that Jada Pinkett knew that Chris Rock was well aware, and Will Smith was also well aware of the fact that Chris Rock knew that Jada Pinkett had a problem with, or she had some insecurities regarding her alopecia. Let's just say that. Okay. Because of that, if you get up there and you start making jokes and you're well aware of what's going on, you can call it a joke all you want. But this isn't about what you're sending out. This is about how I'm receiving what you're sending. And if I receive that as if you're waging war, you're crossing lines, you are crossing boundaries. At that point, cool, you have waged war. So now I come up on stage and I smack you. Now, to a lot of people, the crime didn't fit the punishment didn't fit the crime. Cool, no problem. But understand this: we live in a world where the punishment doesn't always fit the crime. So you need to be very, very careful about waging war against people. You need to be very, very careful. You need to know yourself before you decide to wage war against somebody. And again, let me say this again. I don't know if that was the case. I don't know if Chris Rock knew. I don't know if Jada Pinkett and Will Smith knew that Chris Rock knew. I don't know. I am creating a hypothetical situation to get to a larger issue here, an issue that could affect us all. Waging war. War can be waged in different ways. It can be waged physically, it could be waged emotionally, it could be waged psychologically, it could be just waged with words. There are different levels and different ways of waging war. So if Chris Rock, we're just going to say, just for the sake of argument, just for the sake of this podcast, and the point that I'm trying to make, let's just say that Chris Rock knew. Chris Rock knows, and Chris Rock knows that Will knows that he shouldn't be saying what he's saying. You got to be prepared for what comes with that. When you wage war against somebody, or you people on social media who decide, I'm going to be tough on social media, you think that you're tough behind that keyboard, and you think that I'm never going to cross paths with this person. You need to start thinking this thing all the way through. I'm not saying what Will Smith did was right. What I'm saying is you have no idea how a person is going to respond to something when you decide to wage war. If you smack me, I'm going to try to beat the blood out of you. Some people may think, nah, that the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Doesn't matter, because you don't get to choose what weapons I choose when it comes to war. You waged war. So when you decide that you want to wage war against somebody, you need to know yourself and you need to know what you're capable of dealing with. But you also need to know your opponent and what they are willing to do and how far they are willing to take something. If you're prepared for that, then cool. But the majority of you all are not prepared for that. And the reason that I know that the majority of you all are not prepared for that is because if the majority of the people were prepared for war, there would be a lot more killers. You can talk tough, but when it's time to kill, and you can threaten to kill somebody because your anger, your emotions have gotten the best of you. But when it's time to kill, if you got a gun and it's time to pull that trigger, when you're faced with that moment of truth, you probably don't have it in you. That's why there aren't that many killers. There aren't that many shooters. There aren't that many stabbers. There aren't even that many real fighters. Yeah, we see it all the time. We see it on social media all the time because people love to just sensationalize bullshit. They do. They like to put out fights. They like to just because all that stuff. Yeah, they people think that it's cool or whatever, right? It's ridiculous as far as I'm concerned, but whatever. And that's funny. It's coming from somebody who boxes and does Krav Maga, but whatever. The thing is, we teach peace first, and then we teach necessary violence. But um, but the thing is, like when you are waging war, you have to be prepared for everything that comes with that. You need to be careful about the things that come out of your mouth. You need to be careful of the things that you say to people. I come from a place where you have to stand behind everything that you say. And because I come from that place and the people around me, they feel the same thing, and my OGs and my all the people that are around me, everybody, that's a huge thing. You have to stand behind everything that you say. So if I say I'm coming to whip your ass, I got to do it, which is why I don't run around just telling people I'm gonna whip their ass, because then I gotta stand behind it. I gotta stand behind it. But in reverse, if you say that to me, I'm going to expect that you're going to stand behind that. So now I have to act accordingly. So when you're dealing with people with me or people like me who are expecting, so you can say what I've been doing this whole podcast. What is going on with my? I'm just now seeing this. What is? Hold on one second. All right, I'm sorry. I had one tucked in, one of my strings tucked in and one out. All right. So if you were one of those people who feels as though I can say whatever I want and just get away with it, you got to understand it's a good chance you can get punched in the mouth. You got to know yourself. You got to know what you are capable of dealing with. And then you got to know what the person that you're dealing with is capable of dealing with or capable of doing. If you're not built for this, shut up. Shut the hell up. Keep your mouth shut. Do not stand on stage and talk about somebody's wife. I'm not necessarily talking about Chris Rock. I'm talking about anybody. Again, like I said in the beginning, I want to take this off of Chris Rock and Will Smith and Jada Pinkett. But I'm just saying, that. And when I say don't stand on stage and talk about somebody's wife, I'm really just saying that that's symbolic. Don't run your mouth. Don't run your mouth if you're not prepared for what could happen, or if you're not prepared to react to what could happen, because you can't get mad at the weapons that a person chooses. You can't. And you're going to find yourself in a situation that you could possibly not be built for. So just relax. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now, before I start talking in circles, because I have a tendency to do that. So basically, what I'm saying is, if we as a people could just get to a place where we could create moments, and we created that moment before we wage war, there will be a lot more peace. There will be a lot more reconciliation. There will be a lot more people understanding, because they have the opportunity to sit down and have conversations and understand, okay, you feel how you feel, okay, this is how I feel. Because what has happened is, at that point, when you've created that moment, you've calmed down, that anger has subsided. Hopefully that anger has been put to the side. And even though you may still be left with your hurt, see, reacting to something in a painful way is different, is much different than reacting to something with anger. And anger could lead you to a place, um, to jail. It could lead you to death. It could just lead you to a place where you lose somebody, or they lose you. Somebody that you feel as though you need, somebody that you could live the rest of your life wishing that you never messed up that relationship. So just create moments, and be mindful of who you decide to wage war against, because I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, it's probably not worth it. And depending on who you're deciding to wage war against, you may not be built for it. And even if you are built for it, and if the other person is built for it, it's not going to be a good situation. I was taught a long time ago, everything that you do affects everybody around you. So if I'm built for war and you're built for war, and this thing gets really, really ugly, it's not just me. If I was to take your life and I end up in jail, it affects all of the people around me. There are a lot of people who depend on me, who are looking for me for leadership. I'm the head of my family. So the head is gone at this point. If I kill you, you could be the head of your family. It could be a lot of people that depend on you. Then you're gone. And this really probably could have been just fixed with maybe even a conversation, but it really could have been fixed with just a moment that was created. We could have created a moment and prevented a war being waged. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this now. And I just want to end by saying, I want you all, before you wage war, create a moment, pull back, and look at the big picture.